Griffin Sturgeon from the Seattle Overload podcast joins us on the show tonight. He's going to come on the show. We're super excited to have Griff on the show. We're going to talk about defense, how this defense is rolling, and we're going to really get into, defensive schemes and players that are fitting these schemes, differently with Mike Macdonald's system, maybe compared to Pete, and just how, guys are unlocking. Guys are maybe, excelling in this Mike Macdonald system. And we're also going to talk about the offensive struggles and, focus a bit on Ryan Grubb because there's a lot of attention now falling on Seattle's OC. So we're going to get into that with Griff and look at things like, the personnel that Grubb has to deal with compared to, his schemes and his play calling. And then we're going to dive into this matchup coming up on Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals. We're playing them 2 times in 3 weeks. Took care of business the first time around. Now we're going to their house. So this is a big time game for the Hawks, and we could really put some cushion between us in the division if we come out on the other side with a win. So we're going to get Griff's thoughts on, some of the matchups he's excited to see and some of the different, matchups and schemes that, the Cardinals might throw at us. So all that's coming up on the other side. But guys, before we do that, if you've been liking what you've been seeing on our channel, go down, hit the sub button, share the videos, comment on the videos, and hit the notification button because all that really helps the channel. Or you can go down and you can buy us a coffee. All that helps support the channel. Links in the description. We appreciate the continued support from everybody that's been supporting us. So on the other side of the Hawk Zone, Griffin Sturgeon.
Well, I'm the best corner in the game. For this run. What a run. Get off me.
DK.
Yes, sir.
Hey, it's John Schneider with the Seattle Seahawks.
And Washington's got a lead. Leo Wilson to catch. Jackson, Smith, and Jimbo. The Seahawks are going to host the NFC Championship.
Every year, the NFL does. Is it going to be another 9 and 8?
Players who've got a bit of something.
They have to fix the offensive
Part of his
line.
success and part of
Ambition of being the LOB
One a year, that's trading DK Metcalf.
Play him aggressive.
This is the HawksZone Rundown with Ryan and Bryce.
Welcome back to the Hawks Zone, guys. With us tonight, Griffin Sturgeon from the Seahawks Overload podcast joins us, and to break down where we're at. We're 7-5, won 3 in a row, and have another big divisional game coming up. But Griff, we appreciate you coming on and talking Seahawks with us tonight.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Big fan of your guys' work, so I'm happy to talk some shop with you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Well, let's dive right into it. You talk a lot about schemes. You guys break that down a lot on your guys' show, and you talk about the defense. Let's talk about the defense for a bit. Obviously, and just the defense has been rolling the last month. Even before going to that bye week against the Rams, you started seeing the switch kind of turn on and things turning around. And it was a big takeaway out of that game going into the bye week. And then, the big game against the Niners, we were all, oh man, what do we expect going into Santa Clara, healthy CMC. And we shut them down too, especially the run game. And it just kind of carried over. Obviously, some new personnel, especially at that linebacker spot that, Mike Macdonald, obviously that's what you need for his defense to really get rolling. What do you see as the main difference? Do you see it more scheme than personnel where Mike's been able to open up that playbook a little more? Or do you really think it's just, where Mike's been, hey, I don't like these guys. I need other guys. Boom. I got my rookie start and I got Ernest Jones in. He continues to make cuts in other spots. What do you attribute the biggest differences right now with this defense?
I really think it's both of those things. I think it's personnel changes and scheme tweaks, and then those things feeding into one another a little bit too. It is a little ironic of the coincidence of there being like overt scheme tweaks when you also trade for Ernest Jones. It's not like Ernest Jones didn't know what they were doing beforehand because he was playing the same scheme in Tennessee and playing pretty well. I have no idea what Tennessee's doing, just giving him away for nothing. But, maybe they made their mind up. They weren't extending him. His Tennessee tape was good. But their issues on defense, if you just look at like isolate statistically before you even get to the tape, like where are they good and where are they bad prior to that trade, their third down defense was good. Their second and long defense was good. And like, what does that scream at you? Well, if it's a high pass situation, Macdonald can throw all his chips in defending the pass. And like, yeah, look at the talent on the field. Look at the pass rush. You see their strengths as a unit actually show up on the field. But what happens if you can't create many second and longs and your third and longs or third and mediums are third and shorts and you don't have good run defense? So really all they needed to do was, how do we fix our first down run defense? Like before you even get into like first down play action defense, just fix your first down run defense. Don't be a sieve anymore. And then you can access what you're already doing well. So I think how he solved that was, like when you're gapped out, he plays a lot, or when you're out gapped, you play a lot of too high run defense, right? It's really like, it can't be understated. Like it's hard to defend the run in the NFL from too high. And people say the pass matters more than the run. It does, but you can't take the run for granted because those numbers reflect a league that's still trying to defend the run. If you defend the run on 1st and 10 like it's 3rd and 10, the run's going to matter. That's kind of the direction they were headed. But yeah, Ernest Jones can play that more lateral, I've got 2 gaps to worry about instead of 1 kind of linebacker play better than Dotson and Baker. But then additionally, Macdonald kind of got so say your too high picture, that nickel was kind of out of the fit, but he's folding that nickel in now. So if there are 7 gaps, you got a 6-man box. Say 6 blockers, 7 gaps, you got a 6-man box. Well, that nickel's kind of in there now. And now you're kind of playing gapped out again. Now, Bryce, as an offensive guy, you might be thinking, I'm just going to read you to death. I'm going to RPO you. But they haven't seen a lot of that yet. I'm sure it's coming. But like in the meantime, like you got Devin Witherspoon flying in like a bat from hell. And he's effectively playing linebacker now. I mean, what is a nickel but a Sam anyway, right? So it's like, okay, cool. So he's found a way to kind of fudge the numbers that are too high. You've got a better player in Ernest. And just because your first down defense is better, he can access his sim pressures more frequently, his creepers, even some of his zero stuff that he talked about. You've got your defensive tackle getting pick sixes now. So, I mean, it was like win first down and the guys I got can take care of the rest. And I think that's all it is.
So it's funny you talk about that, Griff, because like you just said, that's kind of exactly how I would attack that as an offensive coordinator. Is I would RPO the hell out of that. But the thing that's interesting is, like you said, a lot of teams haven't gone to that versus Seattle yet. I think a lot of that has to do with some of the quarterbacks we played, except maybe the Cardinals with Kyler Murray, which was surprised I didn't see more of that from them in that game, which I wonder this week if that's what we'll see is more of that RPO out of Kyler this week. But do you think because he's been able now to bring Spoon down and get him more engaged in that role, it's actually unlocked Spoon back to what he was kind of playing like last year and being as aggressive? Because that first half of this season, Spoon didn't play like the Spoon that we saw flying around last year. Mm-hmm. So do you think because he's been able to obviously get the linebackers that fit the scheme properly, it's allowed us now to see Spoon go back to being as hyper aggressive, flying around, making plays that he was last year because now they've unlocked this other aspect of the defense?
I agree with you. I mean, you've activated him in a way, and because he's involved in the run fit, that makes it a lot, probably I would imagine a lot less difficult to then leverage that into turning him into a blitzer, because you can do it off of like it's easier to blitz a nickel that's already involved in the run game and flying down the edge and stuff than a guy that maybe isn't, more of an outside leverage guy. Now that he's more pure inside leverage for most of their stuff, yeah, you just have him attacking the line of scrimmage. I think the other thing is because he's heavier to his run key now, he's just thinking more like, all right, how can I be ahead of the play? Like Earl Thomas was always 2 steps ahead. Devin is like, the more you task him to think about, the more he can weaponize like his ability to read shit out. Excuse me, part of my language. And like go make a football play, like you just have him like going all the time. Stuff he was doing before, like he wasn't playing that poorly. I mean, he was doing pretty well even, but the plays on the ball weren't there because he wasn't necessarily being asked to do it. Even the stuff that would be in his jurisdiction, if he had a bubble, he had to go, fight through someone. he would do fine. But I feel like even that stuff he's doing better now, just because he's so used to coming downhill. So it's like that kind of that knock-on effect too. Like he's just, I mean, I don't know how he exists. He's 170 pounds. And he's like he plays like he's 250 out there. I don't know. And he'll go carry a receiver 40 yards downfield. So I don't know how he exists, but I'm glad he does.
Yeah, this defense, you mentioned Spoon and obviously a guy that plays bigger than he is. You look at Ernest Jones, a guy that comes in and just automatically brings that swagger to the defense, and really that can rub off on a lot of guys, right? And that's what you need on this defense, right? You need that attitude with that Spoon has. I mean, that it's football. You need everyone like that. How good can this core be with Mike's scheme, and we just sort of getting the tip of the iceberg right now. Do you like what we have personnel wise, or where do you think like, okay, maybe, moving forward into the next season with how good this defense is, do you see maybe some upgrades somewhere? Are you overall pretty happy? Do you think Mike's, got a couple spots where maybe he said, you know what, I'm still not 100%, at this position group? Because it looks like, safety looks like Kobe Bryant could be long term. Tyrese Knight looking like a long term guy. It sounds like they hopefully they re-sign Ernest yesterday. But
Right.
Where do you see this defense as a core, and where you think Mike might say, hey, maybe there's a spot or two where we can upgrade it moving forward into the next season?
Right. I mean, they look pretty good,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and we felt like we knew they were talented coming into the season, and the only questions were at linebacker, and linebacker has mostly been resolved. I think the only thing to like really check for is what's the I don't know, the rate of development for Tyrese Knight. He's showing some stuff that is pretty exciting, way beyond what I thought. I mean, I was pretty cynical about that pick. I didn't like his tape at UTEP, but I mean, he's proven me wrong relative to my pre-draft expectations. And I mean, Mike probably has pretty good internal feel about like what is actually realistic for him and what isn't. So, I mean, if he wants to go take a swing on a linebacker in the second round next year, that guy's probably, you're probably pinning the hope on him. Like, hey, maybe he can outplay Knight in camp and contribute. The only other spot, I mean, yeah, like I like what we're seeing from Kobe Bryant. I feel like kind of the field safety spot is like what he always should have been, maybe even back to Cincinnati. And he was a good college corner, right? He's moonlit at nickel too. Like he kind of has the skills for that. I mean, also like he's versatile too, and his value can be in the variety of things you can do with him. Julian Love has proven me wrong. Like I thought Love was one of their issues last year, but he's also being used a little bit differently this year. He's not in as many one-on-one situations. So like, no, he's not your Kyle Hamilton, but he's kind of like the Geno Stone plus for the Baltimore parallels. I mean, maybe you could still add a safety to that. I mean, the scheme can use 3 safeties, and I don't know what plans they have for Kayvon Wallace or Rayshon Jenkins. They probably don't fit into the long-term picture, right? So in my mind would go to probably Will and one of the safety spots, and then outside of that, it's just kind of regular, housekeeping with shoring up the depth at the other spots, but.
So, Griff, I got one question for you. Kind of in regards to that, it plays off of like additional pieces that we could add. The thing I wonder about with Mike Macdonald's defense is, and it kind of revolves around Byron Murphy. Like Byron Murphy feels like he gets played in the right spot sometimes, and sometimes he's tasked with taking on a different role, like the nose tackle role, the one tech kind of area. I feel like maybe that's one thing that they might be missing is someone to free up Byron Murphy from that role, because I don't think Hankins has really been what they maybe were looking for completely. Like he's played and he's done a decent job, but he's not kind of someone that you could rely on consistently, mainly due to age, I think. Yeah. But do you think that would be a piece that they could add potentially as someone to play that role to free up Byron, to kind of let him be more again of a chess piece for Mike Macdonald along that D front?
Yeah, I agree with you, because at Texas, like he played so much 2-eye and he was good at it. And he probably will be good at it in the NFL. Like he's had some good games and some rough games as a 2-eye this year. But you're talking about like a squatty 300-pound guy whose first step is lightning quick. Like he's a 3 technique in my book. He's a 3 technique that can play nose, as opposed to a nose that can play some 3 technique. And like credit to him, like I believe he'll be a good A gap player in the NFL. I just want 2/3 of his snaps in the B gap doing something, getting upfield, right? So yeah, I mean, they got to find like the Hankins mirror, but like the better version of that probably, so that you only have Murphy in the A gap when you want him there, not because like, oh, the defense requires a player that can handle it. I mean, yeah, because you want that guy. I mean, you draft 300-pounders to rush the passer in the first round. You don't do that to stuff the run. Ideally, they do both, right? But hopefully they can find in those. And in Baltimore, he had like, I'm pretty sure they always had 2 guys, like 2 Hankins essentially at all times. So I imagine that they'll definitely be coveting that type of player. Yeah, so I'd agree with you there for sure.
Yeah. Hey, Griff, switching gears here, talking offensive side of the ball. Obviously, defense has been, stellar last month, what we just talked about, and bright spot and really carrying the team the last while, and now first in the division. The offense has been a different story. We came into this season, at least Bryce and I, with higher expectations. Obviously, you saw the pieces you had with DK and Tyler and JSN, the 3-headed monster in your backs, and Gino's back. Really, the same personnel coming in, and you got excited about Ryan Grubb because he was this college guy, sort of ceilings high, and you figured coming from Shane Waldron, we need a guy to just unlock some of these guys, right? Offense has struggled. When you look at Ryan Grubb and his schemes and play calling, how much of it, the struggles, are you putting on Grubb with his type of schemes and play calls, or do you attribute it to, like, a lot of people just right away look at the offensive line and say, well, he can't do anything because this line is just so poor. And then there's other people who say, well, you got to adapt to that O-line. This is what you got. You know what you have. You and Scott Huff, be a little more creative. That's what you just kind of two sides to that. Where do you lie? And how much is it his schemes, and how much is it, some of the personnel that just he has to play with, that
Right.
offensive line, for example.
Yeah. I mean, the easiest thing for, all of us watching the games, like, is to blame the coordinator, right? I mean, I try to refrain from like going too far, just because there's so many realities that like I can't even fathom, and like, yeah, I had high hopes too at UW. Like, that was one of the coolest college offenses. I mean, if like, yeah, they had great players at UW, but like, there are lots of guys that are recruiting well that want to run that scheme and are trying to scheme it, and nobody applied that better last year than DeBoer and Grubb did, like, together as a duo, right? Obviously the results aren't here. I mean, if in Seattle so far, and like we've seen like signs of it and everything, but if you try to translate 1-to-1 UW to Seattle's personnel, the immediate elephant in the room is the O-line. So yeah, it was never going to be UW Huskies in Seattle for the Seattle Seahawks year one, right? With this O-line, that doesn't mean they couldn't still have had a good offense. It doesn't mean he could have done a really good job as an OC in year one, adapting to that. So the question really is, well, how do you adapt to that? And like, look, like, I don't think all those caveats, like, as fair as I'm trying to be, I don't think he's done a great job of that. But the additional kind of like defense of him is this kind of similar defense I had of Macdonald when the defense was doing really, really bad. New staff, very few of these guys have worked together. Granted, Grubb and Huff have worked together, but like, no one else doesn't really know each other. The players don't have context for Grubb. And it's also different when you hire a new OC and that OC isn't coming into a team that has an established head coach. If I'm not making, by any means, I'm not making any comparisons to Pete and Macdonald, but in the hypothetical where like Pete is still the coach and Macdonald is and Grubb comes in, I think Grubb would have done better in year one anyway, just because Pete has background with everyone else. He can get things situated. Macdonald's trying to get his defense off the ground. Like, he doesn't have a lot of time, I imagine, like time on task with the offensive staff as he would maybe in year four, Macdonald would, right? So like, there was always a lot running, working against Grubb in year one. And I think probably even more than any of the most, cynical people could have thought. So like with that said, like, yeah, I mean, I think Grubb needs a long off season to self scout and like, what do I want to start camp with? Like, like last year, day one install was X, Y, and Z. This year it's going to be A, B, and C. How do I get ahead of, some of the issues they have right now, like with play action, or how do I take heat off the O-line when it's time to drop back, and I don't even think it's necessarily the micro design. I think it's more like broader things like strategy, not necessarily tactics, with like, how much am I doing of this and wins, stuff like that. And there's a lot to get unpacked there, right?
Yeah. So you talk about all of that, Griff. And for me, like after the Jets game, we did our post-game show, and I was pretty adamant that I was out on Ryan Grubb. And I'm a big UW fan. I love what he did at Fresno State with the Boar, what they did at Washington. Like you said, everyone's trying to mimic it in some way now in college football, the designs they have. And it wasn't until we had Greg Bell on actually this week, and me and Greg were talking about, Grubb and the hire and stuff. And the one thing he said that really got me thinking, and as an OC myself that I'd kind of forgot, was like when I coach in the league that I coach in, I know roughly what every defensive coordinator's tendency is, what he likes to do, when he likes to do it, how he's going to use personnel. Ryan Grubb doesn't have that book. He doesn't have the book that an NFL veteran OC would have, where he can go, oh yeah, I know when we play, Sorensen in San Francisco, this is what they're going to do. Because you look at the second matchup with the Niners, we were better offensively than we were the first time. Mm-hmm. I feel like hopefully we're going to be better versus the Cardinals. Like, it's just that chance he's getting a second look at what they do. And so I'm prepared to give him the rest of this year to see like how it progresses. If it gets progressively worse, we're having a different discussion this offseason. But like there was some stuff that you posted out on X or Twitter, however anyone wants to rephrase it, where especially with the play action stuff and this run game and this O-line being so dysfunctional is the word I'll use for it, has caused an issue with the play action. Because like you were talking about, like for me, when I call my run game, my play action is married off of what our run game is. But the way they've got it set up currently is they can't do certain runs because they can't block it up for the pass protection on a play action. So now you're basically giving away, hey, we're running play action because we're doing this type of run fake, which we never run the ball out of. So I'm prepared to give Grubb the remainder of this year, but if it gets progressively worse, we don't see some improvements, especially in the short yardage, like that has to get fixed. Like, and Mike Vroll just put out a really good article on the Seattle Times about like kind of the issues with Ryan Grubb and how can it be fixed. I think a lot of it's going to be self-scouting. And there's another part too. We look at what Mike Macdonald did on defense. He jettisoned Dotson and Baker, inserted Kobe Bryant because Rayshon Jenkins got hurt, and that's worked out really well. And Greg Bell told me that like Mike Macdonald really had no say in Dotson and Baker ending up on this team. It was like John Schneider said, here you go. You're building your staff. I'm just going to give you pieces because I've got this pro personnel department and everything. And we've scouted and we've done this. So you're just kind of going to get given stuff. Ryan Grubb inherited this disaster of an O-line, except for Cross and Lucas really are the two best pieces on it. And even Cross has struggled as of recently. I would be really interested to see what Scott Huff and Ryan Grubb do with that interior, that offensive line this offseason. Like, do they jettison most of it? Because Haynes is struggling. Do you move him to center? Tomlinson, as we all know, has kind of been a revolving door at left tackle, and Bradford's been Bradford, and that's basically it. So I think you're right. I think it'd be interesting to see what they do with the full offseason and self-scouting and being able to acquire the talent they need. So yeah, I got to walk back on my statement saying I'm out on Grubb. I'm just going to say that I'm going to reserve judgment until the end of this season on what happens with Ryan Grubb.
Yeah, I'm with you. Cause like in this moment, if I had to make a decision off of everything that's happened to this point, I'd be like, look, Ryan Grubb, great background. He'll probably bounce back, but I want to go see what Tanner Angstrein has, or whoever, the Detroit assistant, whatever. I just want something different because I don't like the way this is trending. If he puts together 5 really good games from here on out, like, or whatever it is, 6, I don't know, then like, okay. I mean, if you had 6 games in the top 10, whatever stats over that month and a half, all right. And then on that note, like if you do bring him back, I'd be intrigued by the idea of bringing in like a veteran OC and that senior consultant. Like, what is Byron Leftwich doing right now? And the reason why I say him in particular is Arians and Grubb, they have a lot in common with how they like to air it out. But what's the one difference? Like, Bruce Arians has that quote. It's like, what do you start with in the offseason, coach? He's like, duo. I start with duo, hard ball down your throat, and then all the play action complements off of it. And like, yeah, like he loves blocking it up with, 7-8 guys in the fit and then play actioning off of that. He has the full complement of the protection calls too, either direction, different motions. He can get any guys in any direction he wants, and he can still throw to Mike Evans 1,500 yards or, Larry Fitzgerald, whoever, right? So like, I think that would be a cool way, like, hey, bring him in to kind of shepherd the structure a little bit, and then Grubb and Pete's can take care of it from there. But in Huff, but if it ends bad, like, look, you've got too much. You've got a quarterback who can throw it, right, and for nothing else, he can sling it. You've got an embarrassment of riches of skill talent.
Yeah.
You can't be in the bottom half of efficiency and points per drive metrics with that amount of talent to a point, like, no matter how bad your O-line is. And again, the O-line is a huge hindrance. There's no way around that. But it's like, I'm definitely on my way out with Grubb, but like, yeah, I want to give him a chance to like finish the season strong. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm in the same boat with you guys. I mean, when you look at it, because realistically, I want to get your take on this, because like realistically, the O-line, when I look at it, like, how much different is it going to be next year? Like, okay, maybe John goes and signs a veteran, hopefully good guard. You got some young talent that's, developing, that, the jury's out. Hopefully Abe Lucas is here to stay now, health wise, right? I mean, that, so you got, and Charles Cross, do you extend him later? Who knows? But I don't see this O-line getting gutted. So realistically, when you look at it, you come into next season, maybe there's a little bit of change, but knowing John, I don't see it, being a blow up, and like, we have to be realistic. I think Hawks fans, well, let's just blow this up and get a bunch of different guys. I mean, it's easier said than done too, right? So if you kind of roll that back, you got a little bit different look there. If Grubb is back, which, there's a good chance he will be back. Do you see, because we always talk about Mike Macdonald needs his guys, and you just sort of touched on that. That's sort of been the focus. Like, Mike needs his guys. But we're not really talking about that, because we feel like, well, this offense is set, right? Coming in, you got three-headed monster. Tyler's probably won't be here, but you got running backs. You look across, you're like, everything's good. But, if you say, hey, Grubb's the guy, and we're looking at personnel, do you see a bit more of a shakeup possibly? If this trend continues with the offense, like, would you see maybe more changes at different skill positions? I mean, even, a guy like Charbonnet not here, and maybe going with a different style runner, that to work with this O-line. Like Bryce and I talked about a guy like Chris Carson, who we absolutely loved, and just a different style runner. He didn't go down on the first tackle at the ankles. He
Right.
just kept going. So is that something that maybe wouldn't surprise you if we see a bit more of a shakeup on this offense?
Yeah, I mean, John's got to do his part with the O-line, right? Like, no matter who you get in to coordinate the offense, like, however good they could be, they're not going to be as good as they can be with this O-line. So you both need to be addressed, whatever means you do that. I mean, I think as roster building wise, like, you just have to bank that Cross and Lucas are the duo you want to tackle, because I don't think they have the resources to try to overhaul guard and the tackles, like you were saying. Like, you can't go into an offseason with 5 holes up front, right? I mean, let's see, I guess, how Oluwatimi does throughout the rest of the year, if he can maybe be a legit guy. His first game was pretty encouraging, and then this past game against the Jets was a little concerning. And then Laumea, it's like his first game starting was pretty intriguing for, I mean, for him to outright supplant Haynes it's like, oh, okay. I mean, maybe he's really showing something in practice. Maybe that's more of an indictment on Haynes. We don't know. I don't think like Haynes was offensively bad or anything in his first game really against the Cardinals, but for him to get jumped in practice, like that's saying something about Lomea, you have to think. But so I guess it's C there. But I feel like the biggest hole in the offseason, both sides of the ball, if you had to pick one, is left guard. Like you got to find a dude there. Maybe that's Haynes too, right? We don't know, but it'd be cool if he wants to look. I don't know how you guys feel about this. I'm kind of trade happy as far as acquiring guys. Guards don't attract a lot of draft capital. If you want to throw third, fourth round pick, you can probably go get maybe not a Pro Bowl guard, but a guard just below that tier that's maybe, getting paid $10 million a year or whatever. I mean, figure it out with your cap. I don't care. Get someone in here that is proven and isn't 33 years old. That can make it work. I mean, John's philosophy of bringing in veteran guards, I think it's been for what the intent is. I actually think there's been decent returns with that method relative to his approach. Like Mike Iupati, to me, was a hit. If you're going to bring in a 32-year-old guy on a veteran minimum, I mean, the first half of every season, he looked like a Pro Bowler. Then you get on the injury report with like a sore hamstring. Then he was never the same. It's like, oh, okay, that's why he was available for $1 million, because he's 32 years old. But like Laken Tomlinson, to me, is not a hit. For example, J.R. Sweezy on the second try kind of worked out. Fluker was a little up and down. But like, I'm kind of done with that, with those experiments. Can we get a dude in here? So yeah, I mean, the O-line can't be underemphasized, man. Like you gotta get guys in here that can move people.
I'm honestly going to say that Seattle has the Steve Hutchinson curse at guard, because since Steve's been gone, we've never been able to fill that spot either side well going forward. It's like our graveyard is the guard position. But speaking of what you said there, Griff, it was something interesting. I heard Mike Holmgren say it, I don't know if it was a few months ago on his show on KJR or what that, but he kind of said, back when he was GM and coach of the Seahawks, he said, I screwed up when it came to how I evaluated the sides of the football. Defense, I used to get veterans on. Brian Russell, Deion Grant, those type of guys. I used to bring in veteran defensive players. And I'd go through the draft on offense for linemen, for whatever. And he said, it's the other way around. You spend money on your offensive line in free agency on established, good veteran players, and you go cheap on defense because those guys are going to be hungry to fly around. You go through the draft, you do it that way.
Yeah.
I am so ready for Seattle. Like, I'd be happy if they turn around and they said, okay, cool, we gave up our third round pick and next year fourth or something like that, or a second round pick, and we went and got Joe Thuney out of Kansas City because Kansas City decides they're going to trade, hypothetically. Yeah. I am not going to complain about the draft capital leaving if I'm getting a premier guard back. Like, I honestly believe if you even had Olu stay as your center and you bookended him with Cross and Lucas and two good established veteran guards, especially one that's probably, say, a top 15 guard.
Sure.
I think all of a sudden Seattle's offense has changed. Geno changes because he's now not having to worry about getting hit every other play when he drops back to throw.
Right.
I'm so done in the same regard as you to just bargain hunting, relying on the draft. And I think with Christian Haynes, I think people forget, like, yeah, there was all this hype around him, but he's coming out of UConn. He's not coming out of an Alabama. He's not coming out of, a Michigan. He's coming out of UConn where they're not, he looked good. He's a good technician, but you can see that his body isn't necessarily there yet. And I think he needs an NFL offseason and an NFL program to potentially be able to do it. Because one of the things Ryan Grubb said about Christian Haynes is he struggles to anchor. He can't anchor anybody. That's a problem when you're a guard and you're dealing with those D tackles and that pressure right there. So
yeah,
maybe that's the difference between him and Lamea. Lamea came out of Utah with Whittingham down there, and they're a very physical-based team in Utah. And I think that's probably what's helping him right now initially is, like, his nastiness. Like, I don't know if you saw it on the TV copy, but he is, like, barking and chirping at the Jets D line. And it was like, that's what I want to see out of my guard. I want to see a guy that's going to go get in someone's face and be nasty. If you miss the odd block, okay, but if you're going to go and the next time you're going to go and annihilate that linebacker on the second level, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I agree. Look, Laumea, when I was watching him, like because on tape, because the camera stays on him, right? He keeps going and going. I'm like, this is Richard Sherman in the right guard's body. Like he just doesn't. He's got to be so annoying to play against. I really appreciate that about him. And like I don't know. I mean, he maybe should have always been a guard. I don't know if he should have even been a tackle in college, but like his ability to like shrink and expand his pads and his hips, like his hips can change. Like it's really easy for his body to reshape. Haynes, like even though I think he can pan out, like you kind of notice like he's pretty high hipped. He doesn't bend at the knees well. He's not sinking those hips well. But if he gets the jump on you, he'll still drive you. But Laumea could maybe even lose off the line and reestablish himself, reroute, and get displacement on you. And he's just a really intriguing athlete. I'm really curious to see what his ceiling is like.
Yeah. Hey, Griff, switching gears again. Let's get into this matchup Sunday. Huge game, man, going into Arizona. Like, this could really, I mean, if we take care of business, we have a really nice cushion. What's your take on this game? Maybe some of the key matchups and schemes that you're sort of looking forward to, and what they might do a little differently. Obviously, we completely shut them down on defense. Offense, it just wasn't a high scoring game at all. But you were confident in this defense, and the one thing for me is, the offense is as much of a struggle as it is. You're not worried about it as much because of how much this defense is rolling, and that gives you confidence that to say, hey, we can. This offense will fix. It might take some time, but it's going to get better at some point. At least you hope. But this defense is rolling, so you're excited about that. But what are you looking forward to most matchup wise in this game against the Cardinals?
Yeah, I was surprised how well the defense did against the Cardinals the first. Like I thought they'd give him a really good game, but in my mind, Petzing's run game is like the antidote to everything Macdonald does, and he schemed through it, and the players played through even some like disadvantageous looks for themselves. They out techniqued him. Like it was insane. I imagine Petzing is going back to the drawing board and is going to like force the issue of some of his gap scheme to try to like out leverage the front side backer on some of these under center runs. As well as shotgun. So I really want to see how that scheme battle goes. I think Petzing's going to throw out a lot more multiplicity in the run game than he did the first time. I actually thought he underutilized some stuff. So that's the main thing I'm looking for. Like McBride and especially in the play action game got them. So we'll see if the Seahawks kind of have a McBride game plan. In the past, when they've had issues, with over the middle stuff, so like the Dolphins game, even though their quarterback couldn't hit anything because they didn't have Tua there, they were really, really sensitive over the middle. I mean, in the first half, they should have had 3 or 4 dig routes thrown on them. Then the second half, though, Macdonald's adjustment was, well, I'm just going to play like cover 3 buzz from depth, get the safety down into the hook to leverage those so he can have vision on it, come top down on it. So I imagine we're going to see, if I had to guess, a lot more of Julian Love rotating from depth out of a too high look into like hook rotation instead of like slot rotation, which is what he's primarily been doing recently. That might be like an early down thing for McBride out of some play action looks, but I think the game will come down to, if from the Cardinals perspective, we're going to try to pop some runs on you, and we're going to try to hit more Marvin Harrison isolation. And I really like the game will live and die by like, can you cap run explosives? And then how many go baller fades do you give up to Harrison? I think if you keep him under 2, I think you'll be good. And if you keep the run explosives under 2, I think you win. But I think Cardinals are trying to get north of that. All in all, I think both teams' offenses, I think they have a better day than the first one, but I don't think they're touching 30 points. I think they go from the teens to like the low mid-20s. And I think it'll be like come down to a field goal, at least 3-point difference. I think it's going to be a really close game. So yeah, how do you guys feel about this game?
So, it's funny you talk about the Trey McBride part of this, because it was like watching old Pete Carroll tapes for me, watching like the tight end kill us in that game. And one thing I think that'll be interesting about that, Griff, is that was also Rayshon Jenkins' first game back into the defense after being off his whatever it was with his broken hand. So it'll be interesting to see how much better he now plays in that situation, which I think they picked on Rayshon a couple in those 3 safety looks a lot with Rayshon struggles to carry guys. I noticed that's one of his biggest issues playing in his new spot is he struggles to carry with them. And I think that left Kobe and Julian in a bunch of weird predicaments with Trey McBride just running by himself. But I agree with you. I'm very interested to see how the Cardinals come out and run the ball because that is such a staple of what they've done this year that's made Kyler so effective and taken the game not necessarily out of Kyler's hands, but made it more manageable, I think, for him in a lot of ways than, hey, go play hero ball with your speed. I want to see Seattle be able to run the ball this game. And I don't mean go and run for 200 yards. I want to see an effective run game. Now, the Ken Walker potential injury is kind of a scary factor because I don't really trust Zach Charbonnet. I've been honestly very disappointed by him, and I think they really did waste a second-round pick when they did take Charbonnet.
Yeah.
So, they said that Helani may get brought up, and you may have Kenny McIntosh. I almost would rather see Kenny Mack get some of those carries and do more of a split with Charbonnet because I think he offers you closer to what K9 can do with his slashing ability. You saw it in the preseason, the way he runs. And, I really want to see AJ Barner get involved. Like they kind of brought Noah Fant back last week and it kind of ate a little bit into Barner's reps. And I think Barner's been our best tight end when he's made some mistakes when it comes to rookies and blocking assignments for sure, but he's a much more physical blocker. And he's also, I found quite effective out in the past, like out in the flats and stuff. He's done some nice work out there. So I think Seattle can really, if they keep playing the way they're playing on defense, really potentially run away with this game if they get on top of Arizona quick and force Kyler to play hero ball and they take the run game out of it completely. And it would be nice to see this defense play with a lead so you can see more of what Macdonald does when he's got a lead than rather than, hey, we're trying to stay in this game or contain what they're doing because we can't really give anything up because our offense is sputtering and dying. So, for me, on the offensive side, at least for me, I want to see more balance and I want to see more of a creative running game, I think, from Grubb this week.
For sure. Yeah, on your Barner point, I mean, he even if he's not catching the ball, like he's a pretty athletic dude he ran a 4.7, but his 3 cone shows up on tape. I mean, he's really fluid and coordinated. That's the thing with the combine. It doesn't really capture coordination.
No.
But that's like the most important part of it. It's like why Michael Bennett was so good because even though his testing was terrible, he's incredibly coordinated, right? As a pass rush and run defender. So yeah, Barner's pretty interesting. I mean, he punches way above his weight too as a blocker. Like some of the blocks he's made have been pretty impressive. And like he's not one of those 270 wide tight ends. He's like 255 max maybe. And he moves guys.
He's what I think they thought they were going to get with Nick Vannett. When they drafted Nick Vannett out of Ohio State, I think what they were envisioning is what they got with Barner now, which is a physical guy that is fluid, that has good coordination, that can move. And the thing that was funny is when you watched him in the preseason, like I went down to the Lumen Field game, Curtis Allen and a couple other guys that were down, they were saying he looks like he's lumbering around. He doesn't move. And I was kind of watching him like, no, he actually moves pretty good for a tight end. He's got to adjust to playing in the NFL. And part of it, too, is with these guys is the hashes, right? Like all of a sudden, everything's a lot more condensed for a tight end, especially a wide tight end.
Yeah.
And now it's like, okay, I don't have it. Like if I run my flat route, like it's like right there at the sideline. It's not like, if I'm on the left hash and I'm running to the right flat, like I have some space to go to get out to that flat. And so I think with Barnett, he's adjusted well. I'm like, part of my thing is I don't understand the Noah Fant re-signing at the money that we paid him for. We don't know how to use him. And the thing that bothered me too was Ryan Grubb has never shown, even at Washington, tight ends were not a big part of that offense. Like Devin Culp and Jack Westover, yes, they had roles, but they weren't like huge established roles. It was Jalen McMillan and Polk and Taj Davis and Roma Dunze and those type of guys. Like, it was a receiver-driven passing concept. It had nothing to do with the receiving tight end being built into it. Like Jack Westover's most famous plays were saving Penix from almost throwing it in the dirt on a flat route. And I think an out at one point he caught against Washington State in the Apple Cup. Like, why are we spending $20 million on a tight end when we could have taken that money and spent it in the interior of our offensive line and not gone with Lincoln Tomlinson?
Well, and that brings me back to this, like, I don't know what to call it, theory, phenomenon, whatever observation of, I don't really know how tuned into the schemes Schneider is. I mean, he's got a background as what was he, like a D3 receiver, so like he knows ball, but like how do you watch UW? And I mean, like Fant, look, you can run a weak side choice with Fant. Westover ran a lot of choice, right? But like you said, like how many targets did Westover have? 30. Like what? Why are you like? How many targets could you even conceive of Fant getting preseason? If the top 3 earners are going to be receivers, like how many targets, how many balls are left for Fant? Do you value that at $9.5 million or $10 million a year? Like I don't get it. And then even then, like he's not the kind of guy that makes 11 personnel super easy, because you're not going to stick him in line, right? I mean you can a little bit, but that makes the blocking schemes really, really confusing. That's why Barner keeps featuring, is because he can do that stuff. Again, it's just like structure, like him simply being on the field, even if he's not like accruing stats himself. Barner being on the field over Fant lets you access more and different offense. So I don't know. It's perplexing to me. I'm with you there. I think one thing they can do is be more balanced. Like, yeah, there's the desire to be pass heavy and everything, right? But and I did some charting, look at some stats, like their pass rate within each formation bucket, like shotgun and under center, they're just lopsided. Like, yeah, you can be in the top 10 with your aggregate pass rate, but like within shotgun, they're like 5th or 6th in the league. They're like 76% pass rate. So if it's shotgun, 76% chance. When you have a bad O-line, like what are you signaling to the defense? Hey, we throw the ball 3/4 of the time, trot out your pass rushers and bring all the heat you can on our 5, undermanned group, right? Then you go into under center and you're throwing 30% of the time, which is also like bottom 5, which is a bottom 5 in the league. You can still throw whatever it is 58% of the time on early downs if you simply reduce the shotgun runs and then increase the under center pass rate. And then, hey, you also get to play action more, which in theory is supposed to be a really good thing, like supposed to be easy money. They're just not optimizing themselves. And look, that's where my mind goes to the self-scout thing. I just feel like they just haven't, like unraveled this knot yet. But like that's you're not even talking design, right? You're just talking like, hey, put more runs in your shotgun sample to make the D-line cool it a little bit,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. But yeah. So
I mean that's where we're gonna kind of see how he ends up the season, because like you said, that's sort of things where you're just sort of shaking your head like this, all of a sudden, like how predictable do you want to be? And he's making it predictable, whether hey, we're gonna pass or we're gonna run. It's kind of showing to you right away. But yeah, I look at this game, man, like I'd love a balance too, but I don't have high hopes for this run game to get going. I just don't. So I don't expect. I'd like to see them get Gino out rolling around a little more design runs for Gino. I think when we see him, a lot of positive things have happened when he gets out and uses his legs. It's the run game's just been a struggle all year. So I honestly, if I got to be realistic, I don't expect a lot of changes offensively, I think. But if they want a little more, just get Gino out of the pocket, get a little more creative, use his legs. And yeah, I mean, you might just have to rely on some big plays with your guys, with JSN and DK. And yeah, I mean, I'd love them to establish the run better. I'd love Ken to go off. But I don't have a lot of hopes. And I think this defense, man, I think the confidence level is sky high right now. I think I expect them to come in and do a lot of the same, especially if they can, the way they got on Arizona early, that first series where they just it set the tone off the hop. It was like, man, it reminds you of those Legion of Boom days when, some guy, like Cam Chance are setting the tone and you're like, okay, well, this is pretty much how the rest of the game is going to go, man. So you guys better be ready for it. So yeah, the Cardinals, they got pounded. They didn't do anything on offense. So how's their confidence level knowing, hey, they're going to play this defense 2 weeks later? So, and Leonard Williams is just a man on a mission right now. So I expect him to I just think he's going to keep rolling. I expect big plays from him. I expect big things from this defense. I agree, though. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I think it's going to be a close divisional game on the road. I got the Hawks. I do got the Hawks winning. I think they'll pull away. But I just expect pretty much the same thing from this defense that we've been seeing the last month. I think you're going to see a lower number run game. They're going to try to run the ball, and I think they're going to resort to, they're going to have to get a little more, use their tight end, use Harrison. I don't know. I just think I think this defense is for real, and I think there's going to be some bumps in the road, but man, this is looking like it could be the real deal. So I have a lot of confidence, and I think Seattle wins by, I'm gonna say, I'm gonna give them I'll say 23-16 Hawks. Give me a score.
I predicted this. I can't change my number. I did it on my podcast with Maddie. Now that I think about it, I feel like it should be a little lower than this, but I got 26-24 Seattle. So
okay, nice. Bryce, you got a number here?
I've got 13-3 Seattle.
All right.
Hey, I would like that. I'd enjoy that. As much as you'd be frustrated again with the offense, to just put a licking on them again on defense.
There you go.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised at that, man.
Here's something interesting. So just a tad note before we get on to the last little bit of the show here, Griff. So I just went up and pulled up the personnel tendencies for Seattle and comparing last year with Shane Waldron to this year with, Ryan Grubb. The Seahawks mainly run their offense out of two personnel types, which is insane to that and speaks to what we're talking about with that imbalance. They run almost 80% of their plays out of 11 personnel, and they only run like maybe 10 to 15 out of 12. Everything else is below 2% that they run.
Yeah.
And that's this year. If I go to last year, they still were high in the 11 personnel with Shane Waldron, but they were only at like 60.
Yeah.
And the other 25 was in 12 personnel.
Yeah.
And I think for a team that's struggling to run the football, you might need to balance that number out and get a little bit more double tight out there to at least give yourself a fighting chance. Because right now they just don't have it running out of 11. Like, and I get you want to have Tyler on the field, and I'd rather see Barner and, as crazy as it sounds, Pharaoh Brown blocking, or Noah Fant and Barner and just JSN and DK out there, and at least try and establish something and do the thing that I think too that the 11 personnel kind of limits for Seattle a little bit is their boot action game with Gino, because you can't seal that. You can't wash down and then have your tight end slip out, which we all know that the Rams are famous for. And, Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan run it to death, where they, fake wide zone to the left, come back, boot the other way, drag your one tight end, and then have your one tight end on the backside chip and go to the flat.
Right.
That play kills teams, and it can be an extension of your run game. Like how, Bill Walsh used to talk about the reason they reused Roger Craig out in the flat so much is, okay, we knew we weren't going to be super physical, but we can get him the ball and get K9 the ball and other guys out in the flat, and it's an extension of our run game. It's able to let us run the ball a little bit without having to actually physically hand the ball off to somebody and run it. So it's just an interesting thing about this offense and how it's kind of all over the place. But the last, kind of topic here, Griff, that we'll get you your thoughts on, the overall view on the remaining games for the Hawks down the stretch and how you see this season shaping up.
Well, before the Cardinals game, the first Cardinals game, I had them losing that game. And I thought they were going to finish the season either 8-9 or 9-8. But given how that game went, given how like the Jets game, they absorbed a lot of just like crap that game and still won. I feel like they win 10 games this season. So I think they, what are they right now? 7-5. I feel like they go 3-2 rest of the way, finish the season 10-7. That probably gets them the division. And because I don't think you want them to be a wild card. I don't think that's going to happen. So it's like division or bust right now. So I don't know. I feel like right now they're on pace to, get 3 more wins. And I mean, because looking at the schedule, it's pretty rough. But I feel like they're the type of team where it's one of those things where, hey, they could win every single game. I could see them losing any of those given games, not losing all 5, but like if any one of those are winnable, but they're also losable. I don't know. I think they win this one. I feel like they match up better with Green Bay than Minnesota. I think they win one of those 2 games, and then I think they get revenge on the Rams. Well, shoot, they're playing the Bears too. So does that mean I think they're winning 11? Who knows, man? I somehow, some way, they finished season 10-7 is my guess at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I think we all have confidence on, like I said, is defense, and that's why I think that they can be in every single one of these games, even those tough games you mentioned, like the Green Bay, Minnesota. If this defense keeps showing up, they should compete, and that's all you can ask for. So, yeah, I'm in that same boat, man. 10, 11. I agree, it's division or bust, but yeah, awesome stuff, man. It's awesome having you on, man. This was an awesome conversation. But before we let you go, what do you guys got going on at Seahawks Overload? And where can people find all your guys' stuff?
Yeah, Matty Brown and I occasionally, Ty Dan Gonzalez, he joins it when he can. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, but we do mostly like visual podcasts. So like we'll narrate over watching tape kind of live. So just find us on YouTube, Seattle Overload. Matty also writes, so check his stuff out. It's really good. We have post-game recaps, and then we try to get a tape episode in some point during the week. So if you want to check that out, I imagine if you like this podcast, you'll like our podcast as well, because we kind of all speak the same language. So yeah, hey guys, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you coming on. Awesome stuff, guys. Go down and sub to their channel. And Griff, appreciate it again, man.
Yep. Take care, guys. See ya.
Take care, Griff. Thanks, man.
Yep.
Thanks, man. Peace. Guys, that was Griffin Sturgeon. Awesome conversation, man. Just breaking down a lot of scheme conversation. So guys, if you're not familiar, man, this was an awesome conversation. Even if you are familiar, it's just a great conversation to kind of dive into that side of things. That's what him and Maddie bring to the table a lot. So yeah, awesome conversation, man.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'd love to get Matty on the show because I know he's a defensive coordinator, and I'd like to kind of have that, for me, offense, defense kind of chess match that we play. And no, it was a lot of fun having Griff on and going into that level of detail with the scheme that he thinks that, what Mike Macdonald's done to change Seattle's scheme, what could work for Ryan Grubb in changing our scheme to maybe help this offense out. And also what he thinks the Cardinals may try and do to us, having this game be so close to the last one. It's not like you've had a 4 or half a season between games. You're literally coming right back to play each other. So yeah, it was a lot of great information. So
yeah, no, for sure. And it's interesting, man, how a lot of people thinking now, hey, this team could be a double-digit win team again, right? I mean, it's been a crazy, Griff's thinking 10, and he's and a lot of it comes down to the defense, man. Like, it's like, hey, like, this defense can keep us in every single game. I think if you just dated back a couple weeks or a few weeks back, when we still had at least Dodson and the run defense was still poor, you'd look at the schedule and be like, man, we're going to get whooped by Green Bay. We're going to get whooped by Minnesota. Now you look at it, the way this defense has turned around the confidence level, they're going to be very tough games, but you're going to say, hey, you just expect to compete. Like, not that, there might be a game we get blown out, but you just feel like we can go in every game with this D and compete, even if it's a low scoring game. And look at the score you just threw out there, 13-3. Most other times if you said 13 for the Hawks, you'd be predicting a loss. So that's just a testament to this defense and how Mike's really turned it around mid-season.
Yeah, I know. And honestly, my score predictions have been close and they've been completely out in left field. I don't know. I just get a vibe. Divisional game. Like, I think Seattle could be one of two things. Seattle, could hold them and not let the Cardinals do anything and get a bunch of turnovers and just the defense takes over. Or it could turn into a game where maybe the offense clicks and there's a shootout. Because I think I'm going to be – I honestly think, man, like Ryan Grubb's got some pressure on him. And I think because beat reporters are now writing about it and podcasters are talking about it, and people in the Seahawks organization, as much as people don't think, they do listen to this stuff and they do get, pressure and so that, like, there's probably some talk going on in that, with Mike Macdonald, him being like, hey man, like, you need to figure this out. Like the defense can't keep carrying this team all the way through. Like, let's find some shit that works and get it going. So
Yeah, that's a totally great point. But like you said, he's still got 5 games. Plus, if we win the division, then hey, see what you got in the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, I would love it if all of a sudden, there's been some switch that gets clicked and we just start rolling on the offense and things get turned around. That give you some hope and some optimism with Grubb at least moving forward. But yeah, man, awesome show, guys. Again, go down to their channel. Link is going to be in the description, so you go down there, click on the link, go down, give them a sub because Griff was awesome to have on the show, and they got great stuff. And make sure to also sub to our channel if you've been watching and you like what you've been watching and hearing. And we got some stuff coming up as well. We're going to be coming at you guys live, and we're probably going to be doing that on the Monday. So we're going to be doing not the ordinary Sunday, but we're going to be coming at you, and that's going to be a live show again. So same thing, Q&As, all that fun stuff. Just keep rolling here. So that's it for us. Bryce, you got any final words?
Hey guys, and remember, go check out our store. I'm wearing a different hat tonight. Check out our HawksZone Rundown store, guys. We got some cool stuff that's going to get announced on the live show that we got coming up for that show or for that store. So if you want, some late minute Christmas shopping, you're a big HawksZone Rundown fan or Seahawks fan, all of our stuff is related in that regard. Go check it out. Get yourself some gear.
There you go, guys. So that's it for us tonight, guys. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.